Welcome to the Policy 101 series with ILMEA, a project that we have taken on as a way of helping our music educator members learn about policy and advocacy in Illinois, and also to equip and empower anyone who's watching, anyone who's listening, to become effective advocates yourselves. And if you've been following along in this series, you've probably heard a few recurring themes like the importance of relationships, the power of telling your story and sharing your experience to really affect change, and how those threads are very much woven into advocacy from the national level to the state level and at the very, very local level too, within your own schools. And that's where we're going to be spending our time in this episode, hearing about a community coming together to advocate for music education in their schools. And to tell that story, Lauren Rupert and I are very glad to welcome Ben Luginbuhl and Lauren Romero. They come to us from the Unit 5 School District in Normal, Illinois. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking us to speak with you.
So to start us off, would you just take a minute to introduce yourselves and tell us about your teaching positions in the Normal Community Schools?
Okay, all right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Luginbuhl. My day job is I'm the choir director at Normal Community High School in Normal. So I'm a full-time choir teacher at 5 choirs. I also am the department chair for Normal Community for the music department. We don't have a fine arts coordinator in our district. And so there are 2 high school department chairs, 1 middle school department chair for all 4 of our junior highs, and then our elementary chair, who is Lauren. So I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Lauren Romero. I am the general music elementary curriculum chair. I'm also a general music teacher K through 5 at Benjamin Elementary School. And next year I am embarking on 5th grade band at the junior high school as part of my responsibilities as well.
Yeah, we always find ourselves in situations where we're kind of learning along with the students and adapting as we go too. It's kind of a trait of being a music educator, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely. I've taught every grade in our district, which is K-12. So in my career so far.
And several buildings across. It's always nice to be able, I've taught at several buildings across the district, and it's always nice to, you really get a sense of where all of our students are. So it will be fun to now be at a junior high and get a sense of how that operates in addition to gen music.
And I think with both of you saying you've taught every grade in so many different buildings, that has to set you up really well for, understanding the needs of different buildings, understanding the needs of different student populations. And so in your leadership positions in elementary music and in the high school music, I have to imagine that's incredibly valuable for you and your colleagues. For the next part of this, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Rupert. She is our ILMEA Policy and Advocacy intern this summer. Just to ask some questions about your experience and your story that you're here to share with us today.
Great, thanks, Lori. So to start us off, for those who are unaware about what happened in your community, could you just give us a brief overview of the timeline of events back in March?
Sure, I'll handle that question. Our school district is large, especially for being in central Illinois. We have 13,000 students, I think, over into K-12 district. The school district has a structural deficit in the education fund that is approaching $11 million right now. It was at 12 or 13, but they saved some this year. So I think it's around 11 at this point. The rate for the ed fund has only gone up 10 cents since the early 1980s. So they're still operating. Oh, and in that time, the district's population just exploded. When I started teaching 24 years ago, we had 2 high schools and 2 junior highs. We now have 4 junior highs. We have 16 elementary schools. I think there were maybe a dozen when I started. So the school district has really exploded. So the ed fund, the number of teachers and buildings has grown. And so to staff those takes a lot more, funds. And with only a 10-cent increase since the early 1980s, it's not able to cover that. So not only do they have the problem with, the state not paying for everything, but this ed fund shortage. So on March 2nd, they had been talking about some cuts, and on that day they announced what those cuts would be, and that included 2 administrative positions in the district. They would they'd make the class sizes larger in the elementary schools so they could reduce the number of sections. They did eliminate some stipends, with including our general music teachers, their very small stipend they got for doing concerts at the elementary schools. Our 8th grade foreign language program, which included our 8th graders coming to the high school building they would go to take a foreign language before school. And then, of course, the 5th grade instrumental program. And in our district, the 5th grade program is they bus the kids from their elementary school. They get out at 2:30 from school, and then they bus them to the junior high they will attend in 6th grade, and they have their lessons there. Instead of the teachers going to them, the kids come to the teachers. And so that's the way our program runs. And so they were going to eliminate that based on bus costs and teacher costs. So they told us on March 2nd and said the board would be voting on it on March 9th. So we literally had 1 week to deal with that happening, and we had no idea it was coming. So it was, they just announced all these things and said we're voting in a week. So that's where the background was of what happened and why it's happening. We certainly empathize with our school board of needing to cut things when they have this huge deficit, and it's projected in a couple years. I don't remember, Lauren, if you remember, but it's going to be like $30 million pretty soon if they don't do something. So from their standpoint, they had to make some cuts, but unfortunately, the 5th grade instrumental program was included in that.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine how stressful that must have been to hear, not only just to kind of hear that word of like budget cuts and cutting programs, but then to hear, okay, within the next week, this is happening.
It was shocking.
Yeah, I am sure. So what was your course of action? How did you handle this?
In Unit 5, I think we're really very fortunate. We have a great group of Unit 5 music parents, an organization that's there to help our students and all of us. And we had a meeting with the Unit 5 music parents to discuss what it is that we were going to do. The meeting was closed to the public and open to music parents, the music parent board, teachers, and parents who were interested in advocating for our program. It wasn't open to the media. It wasn't open to anyone else. And we really had a great discussion about, so what were we going to do and how are we going to move forward? We had Patrick Manieri, who's a former band director and fine arts coordinator, high school administrator, and he offered assistance, and he came in and really talked with all of our parents and all of us that were there. And he gave us a rundown really on how school funding works, what arguments to use when, talking with the school board, things that we shouldn't be saying, so that we could really move forward in a positive light as we moved into going to the board meeting. So that night was very helpful. It was a couple of hours of, talking and listening, and how are we going to frame it? The Friday before the board meeting, the music faculty all met so that we could speak and talk about, this is what we're going to do, this is our messaging, and the 4 building chairs are going to speak on behalf of our whole K-12 department. So everyone knew what the message was. We were able to listen to each other, K through 12, and then identify how we were going to move forward and what our discussion was going to be. We also were able to identify some students that we thought would be helpful and who would address the board in, politely, kindly, but really send a good message about how it had impacted them throughout their experience. That night of the board meeting, we got there early, the 4 chairs, so that we could be the first voices that the board heard, so that this was what we were looking for, this was how we wanted to move forward, and this was the message from the K-12 music teachers of why we would like them not to eliminate our program. We divided our arguments across the 4 of us into 3-minute presentations, so we didn't go over time limits, so we knew that the message was clear and everything was heard by the board. And then we challenged some of the figures that were presented to the board as reasons for eliminating the program. So some of that came down to numbers during COVID, how eliminating the program would really cause an upheaval in the junior high teaching schedule, and how we weren't maybe equipped to handle just change gears without changes in teaching schedules. And one of the things we really wanted them to have done was to talk with us about, were there different ways that we could have helped if we'd had that discussion, so that we could have maybe helped save the district some money. And then we also talked about the benefits of music education for our students. And we wanted to be sure everybody was on the same page. And I think that night, most everybody was in that same messaging. So the board was able to hear it again and again from parents and students and teachers as well.
So again, that is incredible. And I mean, just to, again, put that in the perspective of all of that happened in 1 week. So you were able to meet as a department, you had a parent meeting, you got on message, got everyone on message. That is really, really, truly incredible. So truly just congratulations for even just for organizing all of that. And then of course, I'm sure teaching on top of that all. And one of the things that it kind of seemed like, just even from reading news articles and such about what happened, is that one of the things that made this really successful is that you had a lot of support already in place from parents and things like that. So how have you gone about building that parent base over the years?
Well, long before either one of us were in the district, George York is a name a lot of people know in the state. He was the band director, and he was the music coordinator when they had that position. And he was our band director, and he formed the organization called the Unit 5 Music Parents. So years before any of us were ever in the district. And so it was an established group. It's a nonprofit organization, it's registered with the state. And so they run funds through us. They support all of the secondary music programs, band, choir, orchestra in the district. And then, so like they do a big fundraiser, then each organization gets, like the choirs at each school gets a certain amount of money from that. And then, they're there. I've been around long enough that we had some decisions in the past where the school board was going to try to change, or the administration wanted to change some things, and the parents went in and they organized, and they were able to go to the board, speak to the board, and get some of those things stopped that were going to be detrimental to music ed. So they've always been there, very supportive. The parents are elected from across our district. We actually have a new slate of officers that are starting next year, but they really were on fire when this happened in that such a short time. It was really amazing. Most of the time it's just raising some money here and there, and they don't have to do a lot. But when trouble comes, man, they were there right on the spot. And I just give so much credit to Karen Fryer, who was the president at the time. She's a choir parent of mine. She does not have a student in a junior high, nor a fifth grader, nor an instrumental student. Her daughter's a choir kid. And she was up there, leading the rally, and was just terrific. And all the other parents on the board and the parents who rallied behind us, the parents of the kids. I should say, I don't know if it was said, but there were 69 people spoke at the board meeting, and 67 of them were about eliminating the music program. The board meeting went until 1:45 in the morning, and we were all there till the end. So it was crazy. But that Music Parents organization has really shown many times so much help for us in advocacy and getting in there and helping out. So we were very fortunate to always had that in our district for a long time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I hope very inspirational to other schools across the state who might not have or might be looking to start growing that parent base, just to show like how beneficial that really can be for us. And I don't think we mentioned, would one of you share with us what was the result of the board meeting?
The result of the board meeting was that they did keep the fifth grade band, the band and orchestra program for this upcoming year. They did reinstate 2 of the teachers that had been cut at the junior highs. Both will still have a job for this upcoming year. The foreign language program did get cut. And I believe one other teacher got cut. Ben, do you know, was there anything additional?
The larger elementary. So the only thing that changed was our music, the fifth grade program got saved, and those 2 directors that would have lost their jobs had that gone through. And I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, we all thought it was a done deal. And we thought with such a short time that they're just going to vote it in. But credit to the board members for listening to us and really understanding how important this program is to our community and how cutting it off at the 5th grade level would be really detrimental to what everybody is used to in the district. And our school district is really known for its music program. So I think that they understood that, and major credit to them. It was wild because they said we motion to table or to go to closed session, and they left the stage, and we're all like, what is happening? And then they came out half an hour later and they changed it all. And so we were all just dumbfounded. It was amazing. It was also 1:30 in the morning, so we were a little tired at that point. But I mean, it was just really remarkable how that all turned out. It was a phenomenal night.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they listened to every single person, I mean, they really could have said, look, we're going to listen until 10 o'clock. I give our board a lot of credit for listening to every single stakeholder that came. We had a 2nd grader, a 4th grader, all the way up into high school, the parents, the community members that came. I mean, it was very humbling to hear how the music program has impacted these students and these families and these parents. And the fact that the board didn't say, well, we're going to table it for another night, or we're only going to listen till 11 o'clock. I mean, they listened to every single person that came to speak that night, and the auditorium was full. So it was quite remarkable. And I agree, with Ben, that we did think it was a done deal, but we weren't going to go down we weren't going to let this program get cut without really coming and advocating, because starting in kindergarten, they see their kids on a stage performing, notwithstanding COVID, but prior to that, and we will go back to that. I mean, they start that and they go all the way up and through high school. And so we had a lot of stakeholders that had a lot to say. And I would echo what Ben said, and being so impressed with the board and the administration for listening.
Absolutely. I think it is rare, perhaps just for a board meeting to go on that long, and then for them to be listening and it sounds like very thoughtfully listening to, and really considering. So you touched on some of this a little bit, but so you said in terms of stakeholders that came out, you had department chairs, there were students from, it sounds like 2nd grade to high school. So were there any other stakeholders or community members who came to speak? And then just overall, as a teacher, how did it feel to have so many people come out in support of your program?
We did. And Ben, jump in too. We had community members. We had some professors from ISU, a town council member. We had the music. We have a great relationship with our music shops, our local music shops in town. They also came to speak. The students, the parents, Ben, other people. I mean, there were just so many.
One thing that really struck me was a former student of ours who's now an orchestra teacher in Sterling, which that's a good hour and a half, 2 hours from us. He drove down and he got there late enough that he didn't speak until after 11 p.m. But he's like, I'm staying here. And he talked. I mean, we had people driving in from a long distance. And I saw a parent of mine her youngest kid graduated more than 10 years ago. They were there. They were standing. They didn't speak, but they were there to show support. And they stood and they applauded. And it was really humbling and really special to just see the community rally, and then also our own staff. A lot of people, like the choir directors, were there. We're not really impacted by this decision, but we were there because it impacts all of us. One part of us goes, it impacts everybody. So it really was a unifying thing for everybody, from the staff to the parents to the kids. And it was, we were live tweeting and what was happening. And it was a really special night.
So you've mentioned, that it's in place for the coming year and that those positions are in place for the coming year. So looking ahead, it sounds like there's still some more advocacy in your future and some more work, by the board, by the district, by your staff. So what are your plans? What are you continuing to do and planning to do in terms of that advocacy work for your program?
One thing is, when the board made that decision, they looked at all of us who were still there and said, we need you to help us. They said, you are going to have to, if you're going to be able to keep this program like it needs to be, you're going to have to help us pass some sort of figure something out, pass a referendum, do whatever we need to do. And it's like, not a great time to do a referendum, but that's what they're looking at. And so they looked at us and said, we need you to partner with us. And we're all like, we will. I mean, we understand what you've done and we will help you. So that was kind of the expectation that was directed towards us in the Music Parents Organization. They're like, we're a huge, force in the district of voters. And so they were like, we really need your help with that. And so that's one way that we can do that. So Lauren, I'll let you say some other things, but I wanted to make sure that got in there too. So go ahead, Lauren.
Well, and I think we continue to, some of us are, still attending those board meetings. Everybody's following the community engagement seminars. They have been online, they have been in person, and everyone is following. And I know that we're saying, hey, there's a community engagement seminar coming up. We really need you to come. We really need you to be part of this process, because I think that the superintendent, Dr. Weichels, really laid it out very clearly about how we got here, where they would like us to go. And it's really going to be, I think, up to the community to decide. So how do we move forward? And for us, continuing to advocate for our programs and to advocate for their involvement, because one meeting can't, everybody has to continue to be involved in this discussion. And there's a lot of really good discussion coming about and a lot of good information being shared with stakeholders and teachers and parents. And, as we continue to talk to our kids about it, our students, I had fifth graders and fourth graders who were in band and fourth graders getting ready to sign up for band. And they had lots of questions. Well, what's going on? Well, how is this going to impact us? And we were very honest on a high level about, look, this is what we're trying to do. And we're all talking, and they were surprised that a gen music teacher would be involved. And I said, K through 12, we're all in this together. And, they're getting their parents involved and keeping it, but we have to keep it at the forefront. There's a lot of community support. There's a lot of administrative support, board support, but at the end of the day, we have to get everybody together. If they're able to if they decide to put forth a referendum, we're going to need everybody to be a part of that and come forth and support those programs and support what they want in the schools. So even at concerts and things, as we talk through, what are your kids learning? Went to a couple of band concerts and orchestra concerts, and they're talking about your student is learning this, your student is learning this. And I know all the way up through, then they're seeing what they've learned. So I think the more that we can talk about the importance of it and what they're learning, the better off we will be within our community to keep it at the forefront too.
And I also, like Lauren said, Dr. Weichel, our superintendent, has done everything possible to make it really clear of what the issue is and how we got there. Because I think the general public doesn't really understand education funding, because they don't need to. They just know when there's things are good or not good. And so, you might hear someone say, well, why can't they just borrow money from that fund? And like, well, that's not how it works. So just that education part of it, and the more people that know it and the more time it goes out, then I think that will help too. But we all get, I have students in the district, my own children are in our district, and we've gotten phone surveys, and they're doing their best to try to figure out what to do with the community's help and asking for the help from it. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing and including us in that.
As we're recording this today, you all wouldn't have seen yet some of the episodes that Lauren Rupert and I have recorded recently, but the way that you're telling your story and your experience absolutely, supports a lot of the main themes that we've been hearing about in our conversations. Things like advocacy is all about relationships. So much of it comes down to relationships and maintaining them, and not just once and done, but keeping those relationships going. Persistence is key. And you've both mentioned too, the value of your own story and the value of your expertise, from the national level down to the school board level. Policymakers don't always know what the day-to-day impact is going to be on a classroom educator. And unless we tell them, they're not going to know. And so making sure that we value our stories and that we value our experiences, and then are willing to share those, so clearly as you all did, and are willing to work together to share that story. Those are some huge themes of advocacy and policy, no matter what level you're talking at. So, and from any three of you, Lauren, or Ben, any other questions or anything else that you'd like to share before we sign off today?
Just thank you for having us and for helping other teachers to hear about ways to advocate for their programs. I think sometimes I feel very fortunate to have been in Unit 5. The support K through 12 and the support from the community, it's just, as we said earlier, humbling. But it's important. And I think as young educators, as we have young educators coming up, how do you keep those things going? How do you build those relationships? So as much as we can do, as we have student teachers coming through, talking through that with them, our student teachers got quite an experience, I think, watching how all of this came together. And good for them to see, okay, it's not just a done deal. You have to advocate. You can't just sit back. You have to advocate, because there are things that can happen that you could never imagine. And, again, our program for this next year will still be there for our 5th graders, which we're really excited about. So it's about stepping up and making sure you have that voice.
Yeah, I echo everything that Lauren said, and just appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you guys. Thanks for asking us.
And as you mentioned, Lauren, I hope too that this will be an encouragement for other educators who may have some issues that are coming down the pike, or may need that encouragement to really solidify their parent base and their parent community. So thank you for the encouragement in those areas, for coming on and sharing your story. Very much appreciate it. And to everyone who's watching and listening, we hope you'll join us next week for the final edition of the Policy 101 series with ILMEA.